Hi, welcome back to my YouTube space. I am doing a review of this book that I've just read. I think Trevor is amazing. Can we just have a moment to talk about that? This book is a testament of his work. I think I've been following him for like about 4 years. First time I watched his video was on like Facebook, and I just kind of like just got hooked on his comedy and his comedic skills, because he talks about like racial issues and like social issues, but then mixes it with comedy in a way that's so simple and it's like just so easily explained to people. But this book is set in pre and post apartheid South Africa, so he's raised in that time to a South African mother who's wow, I can't do it, and his dad is Swiss German, so white. And it was quite interesting like being mixed race in that time, because when he was born he wasn't meant to exist. Like the fact that he was existing was illegal, which is why the book is called Born a Crime. And if you don't know anything about apartheid is a system of, I guess you can say, a system of government where that's based on like segregation and separation of race, and whites being being the considered as the higher race, or the more superior race, and black being considered the minority, even though in terms of sort of population that was the complete opposite. So there was a lot of marginalization where black people were literally moved to shacks and like places like just outskirts from like the main towns. They didn't have access to jobs, they didn't have access to white collar jobs, or any sort of job that meant you being, not being sort of like dehumanized. It wasn't just black and white, so it was a case where it was just quite funny. And I think I've always said this, that I think race is a bit weird anyway, and maybe one day I'm gonna make a video about this. But in the book, for example, like it talks about how say like Japanese, like say the government had a good relationship with Japan, so Japanese were considered to be different from Chinese. Obviously, if you know, Japanese and Chinese people do look very similar. Now I can tell the difference, but they do look very similar on the onset. So it's quite interesting where two people who were like literally around from the same area of the world and are classed as now the same race were considered different based on like the relationship the government had with their countries, which is quite interesting. Anyway, I am just going to quickly talk about some of the points that I really love about this book, and I'm hoping this video doesn't get too long. The language Afrikaans. Listen, you know when you're filling in the form and they're like, oh, what language do you speak and stuff, but I did remember scrolling down the list. This was like a long time ago when I first came to the UK, and then I saw like Afrikaans. In my mind, my Nigerian, I was thinking, that's not an African language, because I know that a language that is sort of like deep rooted in African culture wouldn't be called Afrikaans. It just seems like something. I never googled it, nothing. It's just straight up intuition told me. I know that there won't be a real African language that's called Afrikaans, because Africans don't really view ourselves as collectives like that. We have individual tribes, and now because of society and globalization and politics, obviously you've got African countries trying to come together, but there wouldn't be any African language, true African language that goes back all the way, that would be called Afrikaans. And I was not wrong. It's basically just a made-up language. It's like a Dutch language, just a bit different, that the Dutch colonists, when they moved to South Africa, decided to make up their own language. And obviously, what did they call it? Afrikaans. But that was the one thing that I knew, and I love that the book actually confirmed my thoughts. I was like, my ancestors told me, they did not lie. They whispered in my ear and they said, that's it, we did not give these people that language. We don't know, we cannot, we don't know where the language came from. They just kind of just came up and said we shall, have our own language, even though we're gonna move on, shall we? We are going to move on. So Trevor now is born pre-apartheid to a mom who is his mom was a single mom. His mom, basically, she was quite different, and I think that's one thing that I love about his mom. It kind of explains how he was growing up. He couldn't basically be with his dad and his mom together in public. He couldn't hold his dad's hands. They couldn't be like a family unit. He never really called his dad dad. I think he just called him Robert all his life, because you don't want the child to get used to calling him dad, and then they go out in public and he's calling this man, this colored boy, or this biracial boy, he's calling this white man dad, and then someone catches and then they're like, whoa, what happened there? That's the way they kind of grew up. And his mom made it like, I love that his mom made it like a decision to show him a life that's separate from apartheid. And quite a lot of the book is just based on him and his mom like doing really cool things on Sunday. The mom will take him to see like rich people places and just take him around and show him around. And I think that's really important, because one of the things that apartheid did is like build walls, both physical and like psychological walls for black people, to sort of stop them from sort of seeing themselves any better. The education system was basically irrelevant and just crap, and so you have this generation of black people who were being raised to be nothing basically. And his mom, I love that his mom took him to like a private school. I think at some point he went to a private school. His mom made sure like she showed him how life can actually be, even though you can say, oh yeah, apartheid is over and it's ended. It's like you've got millions of people who you've constantly dehumanized, and they don't know how to live as standard human beings. They can't really aspire to be anything better than what they are, because you, for like so many years from when they were raised to at whatever point, they've been constantly just shown poverty. But I think that was amazing that his mom did that for him, and basically showed him a different life. And I think that's so important. Like, it's so important. But anyway, I want to talk about Teddy. If you read this book, Teddy is a real one. We all need a friend like Teddy. So basically, at some point when they were growing up, he was always very naughty, and then he had this little boy who was his friend, and then they went to shoplift. As in, always been shoplifting, but one day, as it happened, they got caught by the police. They both started running. Trevor, being the miscreant that it is, was running really well, and he escaped from the police. But his friend Teddy, who was shoplifting with, got caught because he didn't really know the tricks like that. You get me? Nah, that was terrible. I don't do that in real life. So basically, yeah, his friend got caught, and then on CCTV, and that's the way color works, is depending on how your contrast be moving that day, the camera decided to cast him, Trevor, who is biracial, as white. So Trevor and this guy Teddy, they were best friends. They were little boys. They were best friends. So when they got caught, when Trevor showed up in school pretending like, you know, nothing happened, the principal called Trevor into the office. So Trevor was like, man, oh yeah, they've caught me. So let me start thinking of how I'm going to explain to my mom what happened. But he got there, and then they were like, Trevor, we know you and Teddy are best friends, blah blah blah. We've seen this footage of this Teddy is, you know, shoplifting with this young little white boy. They showed the camera, because the camera was, I think they didn't really cast him properly. It was just showing Teddy black, and then this little boy as well, white. They were then asking Trevor, who is this white boy in the camera? Like, because you and Teddy are best friends. Like, do you know who Teddy was hanging out with? Trevor said, no, I don't know. And the best thing is, his friend Teddy didn't even like rat him out. Like, he was there, both of them in the same room. Trevor was saying it was like, it wasn't me, because they weren't accusing Trevor, but he was saying, I don't know who that is. And Teddy, his best friend, kept him. That was amazing. If you don't have a friend like Teddy, get a friend like Teddy, you understand? Fufi. So he talks about his dog, Fufi, who he said he describes as the love of his life, or his first love, one of them. And that is so relatable, because kids and children have a really weird sort of it's interesting how animals can have an impact on kids' lives, and that's something I can really relate to, because my cat was like, she was such a strong cat, and it's just interesting seeing how she came into like a family, and how like she gave birth to her kids, and even the way she died and everything. That if I wrote a book, I would basically have a version of like Trevor Noah's situation with Fufi. I have a version of that story, but I think what I wanted to highlight was how, so basically his dog was deaf, and they didn't know that the dog was deaf, so they were always annoyed, like, this dog, you know, you're stubborn, why is this dog not come here? The dog basically wasn't listening. But basically what happened one day was that the dog escaped. He found that, and he went to follow the dog, went to the person's house that Fufi went to, and he went there, mom, or you know, it's like, mom, who's at home? And then basically the owner of the dog, not the owner of the dog, the owner of the house, some little boy basically in the house came out and was like, yes, who are you looking for? And he was like, my dog just came into your house, excuse me, I came here to take my dog. And this little boy looked him dead in the eyes and said, this is my dog. Fufi came out, saw Trevor, and Fufi didn't even move. Fufi was just there, like, just not, the dog, who's Fufi, was just there, like, not even reacting to anything. And Trevor was like, this is my dog. I need to go and take my dog. The boy said this dog was born and raised here, not born and raised, but like was in this house, and this is my dog, blah blah blah. Fufi, being the dog, refused to do anything, so Trevor got hysterical. He went and called his mom. He was crying and everything. Even the mom of the boy that doesn't even own the dog was like, yes, this is our dog and everything. Which I actually thought was really, like, it was scary how someone will strong their mouth and be like, this is my dog, when it's not yours. That's crazy. But he was talking about how that was sort of a lesson that he had to learn really early, and that's something that I've also had to teach myself as well. And he said how he basically had to teach himself that you can love something, you can love someone, but you don't own them. And it's I think it's the same, you can say, with people. It's the same with your pets, with people or whoever. It's like you don't own people. And I think sometimes, I'm not trying to, you know, go into somewhere deep about this, but basically I think sometimes in our sort of relationships with people, you want, like, you can see someone and it's like, you know, this is the best thing for you, this is how you should be, this is what, like, why are you doing this, like, why can't you just see that you can do this, and why? And it's like, you don't own people basically, and that you can't really control what people are or who they are, and you know what they're going to say and who they're going to be, and you know, you can't control anything about someone else's life, and the best thing you can just do is to love them. So you can either just love someone, or you have to love someone and accept that you can't control who they are, you don't own them, you don't get to determine what they do or who they're with or whatever, you just love them. He also said something that was quite deep about forgetting pain. And I'm going to put the excerpts from that, like, on the intro to this video. And it was talking about how you sort of have to go through life and forget your pain, and how, and it wasn't even like something deep that even happened. Like, most of the deep stuff happened even way after he was talking about this, but he was talking about this, like, making reference to his mom beating him, or basically like spanking him, because he was really naughty. He was such a stubborn child, and some of the stories of what he did as a child, like, they're just so funny. But he was talking about how you sort of have to forget your pain. Basically, he said if you think too much about the ass kicking that life gives you, you stop pushing for boundaries and breaking the rules. And he said it's better to take it, spend some time crying, which is very important, then wake up the next day and move on. And he made reference to this when he was talking about his mom beating him up, basically ass kicking him, and he was like, his mom will beat him today. Just basically would say, you dust off your shoulders, yeah, you move on, because life happens, isn't it? So yeah, I don't know why I'm saying all these London things. I don't speak like this. But yeah, I think that was such a profound thing to say. It's such a profound thing as well in the book. There were so many things like that in this book where I was like, whoa, it's like that, it's really deep. But then he was talking about his mom beating it up, and then he went on to something silly afterwards. I also love how he kind of talked about growing up really lonely. He talks about being bullied as well a lot. He was biracial, and that's apparently in South Africa different to being coloured. Coloured refers to sort of like people who were sort of inbred from like long time ago. So like when the Dutch colonists came to South Africa, they bred with slaves, they bred with the locals, and basically over time they just basically generated this colored people who were like basically light skinned and no specific, I think they don't have like any specific features. I think maybe like a good way to explain it might be like Latinas. I don't know if that's rude to say that, but like something like that, where it's like such a mix, because I think Latinas as well, they're like a mix of like African Americans and like natives and white as well, in the States. So I think maybe that might be something similar. He talks about discrimination that he faced because he was biracial, so he sort of looks colored, but then when you I guess find out that he was being raised by a black woman. I don't think his dad was in the picture for some time because of the relationship that his mom was with someone else later on, which I'm going to go into in a bit. I think that kind of brought about quite a lot of like separation, and like he also talked about how he didn't really grow up in the ghetto either. So where you would have, so his mom lived away from where like where black people lived, because like I said, black people lived in shacks basically. So his mom lived away from that because she was trying to remove him from that environment. Yes to her. It's quite sad because I think he also talks about like the privilege that he has, because he was it's so many layers, like there's so many layers to this thing. But basically what I'm trying to get at is he was quite lonely for quite some time in his life, and I think for me that was kind of not sad, but I think I like how he sort of talks about how he basically created a world in his head. For me it's like the opposite, where I was sort of used to being surrounded by people all the time, and then I I came into an environment where everyone's different and life is different, and you sort of are navigating world on your own, whereas before you were navigating world, it didn't feel like I was navigating the world on my own as much as it does now. And I think that's interesting, and how I've had to sort of create like my own space for myself, to nurture myself. But I think that's something that I think quite a lot of people can relate to, and it's something I definitely can relate to, so that was worth noting. Another thing I'm going to talk about is a very, very funny story. There was this chapter in the book that was called Go Hitler, and I kind of read it and I was like, especially because I was on the train when I was reading it, I kind of was trying to cover that part of the book, because I was like, I don't want someone to come and see this one now and they're like, am I trying to get what I mean? But I think it's interesting because he talks about how in South Africa, quite a lot of black people name their children names like Hitler, and I think he mentioned another name, I can't remember which one it was, but Hitler being a profound one. So basically at the time, I think when he was a teenager, he basically started like pirating CDs and music and things like that, and he had this friend who was like such a good dancer, and his friend was called Hitler. And I think it's just amazing how he talks about how black people weren't educated. So they weren't educated, so Hitler to them was apparently this white guy that made other white people scared of him, if that makes sense. So, and they were like, oh, that's great, you know, that's great, let's, you know, Hitler, I'm gonna name my child Hitler, because like everyone is scared of Hitler. And basically they went to this party, and Hitler his friend was the main dancer, so obviously and the guy was good, like he would win dance competitions and everything. And so basically they went to a Jewish school, yeah, they went to DJ at a party at a Jewish school. And then it was time where their reveal was always like their friend Hitler coming to dance. And so Hitler came on stage and they were like, go Hitler, go Hitler, go Hitler. And they didn't even clock, because no one really understood like the issue around Hitler and Jews, and nobody really clocked. These children basically went and were shouting go Hitler in the Jewish school, and the school, they were talking about how the school mistress was like horrified, and everyone was like, oh my god. And I really found that quite interesting, how sometimes we can be disconnected from other people's suffering. And I think it's interesting how in that time, like, the Jewish woman was just another white woman, and he didn't quite understand, you know, the issues around that, and he just went out like, you know, this is South Africa, you guys think you can, like, you know, belittle us for like so long and blah 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 blah. Ended up being, you know, apartheid is over now, we're going to show you. And it's interesting because in that time you think that she was threatening him with Hitler as like Hitler, whereas he was talking about his own pain. But I think he also really mentioned something else when he was trying to explain why black people didn't understand the seriousness of Hitler. It was because, like, he talked about how, say, like with the issues around like Hitler and the Jews, I don't want this video to be bland on YouTube, this was what the book was saying, how with Hitler and the Jews, it was like, oh, the 6 million Jews, there was quite a lot of detail and records about like the crimes against the Jews by Hitler and the Nazis, whereas with black people it's millions and millions and millions of people and suffering that have been erased. There's no accounts, and even most of the slaves, they don't have any records, there is nothing. And it's not just like just the slavery, it's not just apartheid, it's like colonialism, and it's like layers and layers and layers and layers and layers of like oppression, and death as well. It's not just oppression like casually, it's like death, like, and torture and pain, and because the crimes against black people haven't been counted and recorded in the same way that the crimes against the Jews were recorded. It's like, oh, people always say, oh, like, you know, the whole sort of like concentration camps and everything by Hitler was like the worst crime in the history of time ever, or the worst whatever, whereas it's like, and this and I think he was trying to also make a point that it's not comparison of pain, it's just the fact that, I can't explain it, does that even make sense? The fact that because Hitler and the Nazis really documented everything they did against the Jews, it's so easy for people to see, wow, this is terrible and this is what happened to them. Whereas with black people are constantly trying to remind people of the pain and the oppression. So because there's nothing, it's really difficult to see what the problem is. Does that make sense? I don't know. The Cheese Boys was, it's literally called, it was a chapter in the book, and the Cheese Boys are basically like, Nigerians would call it like ajabota. I think that's what we call, actually thinking of it, like butter, cheese, Nigerians call it ajabota, basically like posh kids, and how everyone was trying to, like, the guys from the hood were like always making fun of the kids who were like slightly richer, who live like in a slightly different area, like, oh, they're cheese boys because they're like they're posh kids and stuff. And basically that chapter of the book really faced in his life in the hood. So he was, like I said, he was pirating CDs, and he and his friend who were from the hood, who were cheese boys in a way because they weren't really like hood, how they were trying to make a living. And I think there were so many like incredible points that he made in that chapter of the book that I just think there's so many layers to this stuff. Like, he's just amazing. And I think one thing he talks about is how he talks about like the black tax. If you don't know what that is, that's basically the whole idea that because black people as a collective have been through a lot, black people who are now trying to progress themselves in the normal professional world, for example, are constantly having to like pay money for their uncles, for their aunties, for their mothers, their brothers, to bring them up along. So that's called the black tax, because it's like, you say for example, you're one person who is like trying to make advancement for yourself, but you have like 100 people who are from your village, who are, you know, who raised you, who you have to sort of look after, and that's money that's coming out of money that the average Joe, you know, for example, is just going to be using it to invest or, you know, do something fun with their life, whereas you have to put that money back into your family, and that's called the black tax. The first point he made is how people in the hood have an illusion of making a living, not in a condescending way, it's just the fact that you wake up every day, for them they woke up every day like, okay, how are we going to make the next 50p, I'm using pounds as an example, okay, how are we going to make the next, you know, 20 pounds, how are we going to make the next 50 pounds, but they use so much resources to actually try and make that 50 pounds, and at the end of the day they have to eat and pay off the other people who have helped them in making that 50 pounds, and they just have enough for the next day. So you're like a little hamster in a wheel, and you're just spinning, and you think you're actually making money. You wake up every day at 6 a.m, you go to sleep at 9 p.m, but you're not doing anything, you're not generating any income, you're just making enough to survive. And he talks about how, even though that's really stressful, how it can also be a stress-free life in a way. And I think what he did say is you don't have to ask yourself any of the big questions like, who am I supposed to be, am I doing enough? And that in the hood you sort of just, you can see like a 40-year-old living in his mom's house. And I think I remember one time where I was showing my sister a video of like, I think it was like Igbo people in London. What it was, she was like, oh, why do all these abroad people have to like ask questions about everything? And this, when I read this brought me to that statement where I was just like, I think I've never really talked about my life in like so much, like since I started living here. Because so many things, like life is kind of a bit stress-free in comparison to living in Nigeria, where you're constantly like just trying to make bread and hustling, and you put in so much energy into trying to like get stuff done that you don't have enough time to actually think about things like that. And I think that I love that he mentioned that. Yeah, also another thing that he mentioned about the hood is how like in the hood you never leave, and like how I think going back again to black tax is how like you can easily just get dragged back in. And he said that the hood will drag you back in, and that you'll find a way, because one day, you know, you end up, someone will put like a gun in your car and the police arrest you, and next thing you know, when you're out of prison, you've got nowhere to live and you're back to square one. So that was a note for the wise. Right, I better finish this video because the sun is going down. But the last thing that I wanted to talk about is his mom. She was such a strong woman. I love that she was a Christian. I know Trevor now, he said he's grown up not to be a Christian, which is completely fine, but I think I love that she is, because and not just that she's a Christian, I love that she's not like your stereotypical like African mother Christian. She grabbed life by the horns and she lived by her own rules. At one point she had to leave her family from her town, you know, where she grew up, her mom and her siblings, and she moved away from that because she couldn't find herself within that environment. Not that she's estranged from her family now, but she just moved to a different place and started living on her own, and you know, ended up with this Swiss guy who she then had a baby for, who she then decided to have a baby for. And even when she was raising Trevor as a single mother, like, she was still very religious. I mean, I felt sorry for Trevor because she dragged him to 3 different black churches, not black churches, but like 3 different services every Sunday. I would definitely not be a Christian today if I had to go to 3 different services every Sunday. I think, and that's like a whole day. That's something else. But I think what really scared me the most was how his mom, after the Swiss guy, ended up with an abusive man who's called Abel. Basically, I think the reason why it scared me is that I always tell myself today, and the woman that I am becoming, should I say, that I would never in my life tolerate that. Like, but I think that's the scary thing, because it's like the woman, like his mom, I would never in a heartbeat think that she would stay in a marriage with someone who beats her, because she just wasn't that. But I think for me, who is single, so if I'm not married, without any kids, it's easy. I think even Trevor admitted that in the book, that it was easy for him to say to his mom, like, why couldn't you just leave? Like, why don't you just get out? Why didn't you just leave this man? Because even his mom, I think on so many occasions when his mom, he would beat his mom like really badly, like her husband would beat her really badly, and she'd go and report to the police, and the policemen half the time are his friends, or they will say, oh, it's family affair. Now life sometimes isn't as straightforward as we think it is, and it's not necessarily as black and white as we think it is. It's not like, oh, this is who I am, I will not tolerate anything else. It's like sometimes things just get entangled within each other. And I think it's interesting how his mom told Trevor that Abel, so his stepdad, was like, Abel doesn't hate you, he hates himself. And that really was quite interesting, because it's like sometimes when people are doing things, sometimes you think of, how can you not think of me? Whereas sometimes it's not really about you, it's about they and what they're struggling within themselves. But I don't know, these book reviews, I'm trying not to do spoilers, but I think there's spoilers everywhere. But he did shoot, like he shot Trevor's mom. And I think I got like really emotional on the train, because like I was saying, like Abel was the kind of person who they talked about in the book how when he would beat his mom, they would go for days where it's like it's awkward and like nobody's speaking to each other in the house. And I can definitely relate to that, because I've seen that play out in real life before. And maybe that's why the book really hit a nerve for me, because it was sort of just bringing back memories, and I sort of understand what it looks like when you can see a certain, I don't want to say evil to be superstitious, but like you can see something really sinister. I think that was the word he used to describe Abel, his mom's husband at the time. You can see something sinister in someone, and it's scary because you don't know what that can come out as any day. I found myself on the train, this was just yesterday when I was reading the final part of the book, just getting like super emotional on the train. I was like, oh my god, this is so sad. And I'm glad nobody actually found me in like my pool of tears. The most important thing is the book that the God that his mom served like definitely didn't let her story end like that. And I think even Trevor, like in his non-believing self, even acknowledged that it was almost a miracle what happened to his mom in the end. Like I think he probably didn't intend for the book to be a book about faith, but in the end it was for me. But there was light at the end of the tunnel for his mom and his family, and it's like, it's almost like personal for me, because I'm just like, I'm so grateful to God that happened for them. Because the mom, I think one of the reasons why the mom didn't want to leave the abusive guy, because she literally told Trevor to his face that he's going to kill us if I leave. And that's so scary. It's like, it's really scary. So you have to read this book for yourself, man. I think it's a book that I want to read again. I want to read this book again, maybe like a lot later in the future, maybe like in 5 years time, because there's so many different things to take from the book. It's an amazing book. Like this book is probably a 9.5 out of 10 for me, and that's me like pushing it, like that's me like restraining myself from like giving it too much. Like it's such a fantastic book. Like I think he wrote on his Instagram recently that the book recently came back on like being #1 on New York's Times bestseller lists, and it's so deserving. Like it's so deserving. I 100% recommend this book to absolutely everyone, and I'm not even exaggerating. Such a fantastic book. So yeah, thank you so much for being on this journey with me on my book review for this month. I've already ordered my book for the next month, and hopefully I will see you in this space sometime soon. Take care. Bye.